Hey, this is the Lemken Rubin. It's the heavier version of the Heliodor. A couple things we talked about earlier. We talked about the different style rollers. These are the 2-inch wide flex ring rollers. And whenever you're in sticky conditions, we ran this quite a bit south of Regina and the flats there. And you know how gumbo-y that stuff is. And it worked real good. We sold the 40-footer to a guy right at Grand Coulee with the Heliodor, and they ran it all spring and still using it because it's very sticky ground there. So this is another option to the dual rollers. It does leave it quite a bit more rougher. With a single roller, you're kind of limited to speed too, because actually the depth control of the unit is actually right on the back here, same as the Heliodor. So we got to take and make sure that if you're in rough ground, it takes and bounces a little bit, so your speed sometimes is reduced. Okay, just to kind of give you an overview how the unit works. This unit has the 24-inch notch blades on it. It does have an operating depth of about 5.5 inches deep, and it weighs about 1,000 pounds per foot. Now, what you'll see here is you see what's called the rebound harrow. This is what separates the Heliodor and the Rubin. Because of this rebound harrow, as the lumps take and come off the discs, they take and hit the first row of harrows, bounces down, breaks up the clods, comes back onto the second row of discs. The discs then take and flip it over. Whatever clods are left, the case and hits the rebound harrow in the back. Okay, and then that smoothens it a little bit so that the roller will take and press it down. Nobody's ever had a problem, as far as I know. There's some farmers in the crowd here that use the unit at springtime, and nobody's ever complained about, well, what will it do in front of an air seeder. Just does a beautiful job. Okay, now all these rebound harrows are adjustable, and it's just like a combine. If you're going into shallower, not as much residue, you can make the rebound harrows a little more aggressive so they take and break up the lumps. Especially if you got hard soil, lots of clumps will take and come up, you can set the rebound harrows forward. If you're into a lot of residue, a lot of trash like you see here today, we're going to take and actually move the harrows back a little bit so more residue will pass through it. You will plug this unit if you don't set the rebound harrows properly. Okay? I'll tell you that does happen. Okay? We did, most of the people, if you've seen the videos, we actually did a lot of organic material, and the only one that we had a bunch of problems with was at Grand Coulee. We were doing 56-inch tall sweet clover, and in there was thistles, there was volunteer barley that was, or volunteer oats that was in there, but the one that caused it the most grief was green fall rye. That stuff rates right up there with green flax. It's just the nightmare. It's been one of those, and it will wrap a wee little bit around the bearings, but we tried other discs. We had Easy on it, a 4600 Easy on there, and we got a couple 100 feet and it plugged just like that. It just couldn't get the residue through it. So what I always do is I tell everybody, I don't oversell it. I'll tell you what it can do and what it can't do. So on this unit, it's a little different. We have the adjustments here, and again with this one here, your bottom level, you're starting at about 2 inches, depending on how hard your soil is. If you got harder soil, it'd be about 1.5 inches deep, and this one will go down to about 5.5 inches deep. This tool also loves to be at about that 10 mile an hour, anywhere between 8 and 12. 10 seems to be the sweet spot. And one thing you always have to remember, when you're doing both the Lemkens, you have to move the adjustment pins down at the same time, okay? Because this stops it from floating. So you got to make sure you move these pins down. And again, this is a 3-piece unit. The carrier is separate. These are 2 individual 3-point hitch units that, again, with the turnbuckles up front, you can take and adjust it fore and aft, and just for more aggressiveness. Okay, and again, all the weight on this unit does ride on the rollers on the back, and there's a small, like I said, about 5 to 10% that goes onto the hitch. Okay, you've seen how the other unit folded up. Again, this fits in that 3 by 4 meter box. That's European style. Because this one is a little bit longer in depth, there's actually more adjustment. That's why you see these springs on the side. You take and pull the top pins, and this one, the packers will fold in tighter to the discs. I'm assuming by the speed that he's going there, he's probably got up to about 7 miles an hour. Yeah. Good question. How does it react in stones? With the individual shanks, it'll take in that unit will stay nice and flat going through the field. You won't even notice a stone because each shank will just take and catch each stone and just go over top. It'll take the impact. Each one of those bearings, each one of those discs have 2 flat bearings in it. They're actually automotive. The Heliodor 10 meter takes about 425 for horsepower. That's where it optimally likes to run at 10.5 because then you're looking at fuel economy also. The 26-foot Rubin, the minimum we've had on it is 385. He labored very hard with it. We've had it on 550 horsepower, especially if you're doing hayland. It's going to use all 550 horse to stay at 8.5 miles an hour. So we did some this spring with a 9630, and he was to maintain 8.5 miles an hour up and down the hills. He was actually using 32 gallons an hour, and he had no reserve. So. And that was working at about 4.5 inches deep. So he was breaking up a bunch of green hayland. So basically, I would say, depending on what you're going, the smallest I would put on it is 450. But the big thing is to keep the speed up because it works on centrifugal force, and that's how you get your ripping, you get your rolling. Speed really does play a factor in both the units. So because of the way the blades are, take for example the Heliodor, its angles are set at 15 degrees vertical and 15 degrees horizontal. So you're moving considerably more dirt. And when you're doing shallow, as Todd probably talked about, when today's industry of doing tillage, we always recommend, the guys ask, well, where should we be working? Generally with these tools, we always say around that 1.5 inches. Kind of that is the sweet spot in there. Of course, the 6230, we're going to go a little deeper with that because of the concave of the discs. But the Heliodor, the Rubin, you know, if we can be around that 1.5 inches, 2 inches deep, you're actually going to get the most amount of moisture, air, and decomposition in that zone. So anything below that, you're kind of actually sealing it, especially if you back it down. You're going to see residue there for a couple of years.